Welcome back to the War Room, powered by Prep Baseball. Svihlik and Shooter back at it. It is draft week. DJ, we've been talking about this episode for a while now. I'm really excited to dive into it because obviously you've been behind the curtain for your own organizations. You've seen what other guys have done. Let's talk a little bit about today, what teams might do, who are some favorite draft potential guys, what their plans can be. I mean, how giddy were you this week last year trying to plan for what you guys were going to do with the Marlins?
I think we need to talk about how many bottles of Advil are going to be consumed this week by scouting directors and vice presidents, because for me, it was at least one leading up to Friday and then another bottle or two going from Friday through Monday. So I'm not even picking and I got a headache.
Beyond the Advil, are there Tums? Like, what's the spread like in these rooms? Are you getting a 6-foot hero? Or are you getting a couple of Domino's pies? What's going on?
Well, for the Marlins, it was Subway. You know, for the Yankees, it's probably something a little nicer, sushi and stuff. But no, it was good. Our guys treated us well. You always had good spreads. You had to. You lived in that room. Some teams have a better setup. We talked about this last time. Some teams have a better setup than we had. We had a room without any windows. So I want you to just think about that. What that's like to be in there with 10 or 15 people for 7 days, and you had to really search for daylight. So it was tough, but you get through it.
I mean, we're on the War Room. You were actually in a dungeon, was what it sounds like. But
listen, it was fine. It was all good. It was just some teams are just restricted by space, and teams don't make a diligent effort all the time to create a really good space for these high-level conversations. But you just get through it. You learn to work through it.
Well, that's awesome. Hopefully the Tums are flowing out there pretty good. Everybody's well hydrated. I do think it's so fascinating, as always, to dive into the draft, right? It's a draft of accounting. How can we split this up? How much money do we have? There are pools. There are slots for these guys. We're not going to talk about each team here, right? We kind of identified some of the top end guys. So we're going to dive into the Guardians and Rockies at the top. Those are the two biggest draft pools. 3 kind of in the middle who we're really fascinated by, the Royals, the D-backs, and the Padres, who've done a great job. And then 2 at the bottom end and what they could do, Dodgers and Astros. DJ, I do want to ask you right at the top, because the Guardians have the first pick. We've talked about the college guys, which is kind of the direction we think they're going in, although they could always take that haircut and potentially get a Connor Griffin, even Bryce Rayner. I'm always curious about slot. Okay. And we'll go back to this year. It's right around 10 million. Last year it was at, let me pull it right here. Full slot at 1-1 was $9.7 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul Skeens was just named an all-star. Did he get underpaid at 9.2 million?
Yeah, he probably did. If you run the surplus value on a guy like that, what do we think he's worth? I mean, if you're pushing 8 or 9, if you're pushing, on the free agent market, 8, 9, 10, I don't know what the exact number is. I'm not an analyst, but you're pushing 8 or 9 or $10 million per WAR per year, so what's he worth? That's what they're paying for on the open market. And he's already, I haven't looked at I know he's having a very, very good year. He's an all-star. How many WAR has he accumulated already for the Pirates? Yeah, he is underpaid. And that's the argument, Shooter. That is the argument that people make when they say, just pay him the money. If you really believe the player is going to be a star, if this is going to be a 50 WAR player over a 50 WAR player over the course of his career, something like that, don't get bogged down on the money. But you got to believe that's what the player is, because that's what he's worth. This is the cheapest you'll ever get a major league player, because once they get to free agency, then the tables turn and they got you. So if you believe in the player, you got to be willing to pay the freight. We did it with Thomas White.
Yeah. I always think it's incredible for the guys who get super over slot, right? 3rd round. We talked about Brock Porter, Hudson, whoever it may be, but the guy at 1-1 got under slot. And it's always fascinating to me. Like, this guy is in the all-star game. He was blowing stuff up at, blowing stuff up at Air Force 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago.
That's right.
So anyway, let's dive in right off the top, because I think everybody's going to talk about it. The Guardians have a ton of money to spend. You're looking at a team that has 4 picks in the top 100. They're looking at just a hair over $18.3 million to spend. There are all sorts of avenues that they can go down. But why don't you give us a little bit of a history lesson? What have the Guardians been doing? What are they valuing? Where do we think they could go?
I'm going to circle back. I was thinking when you were talking right there, and I'm going to knock that out in 1 second for you. And I don't like to share a lot of personal stories all the time and personal details because that's private stuff. But this first pick area, when you're up in this first area of the first few picks of the draft, any given year, it could look a little bit different. When you're pulling Skeens or you're pulling Bobby Witt or you're pulling Adley Rutschman, understand that these players don't exist in every draft. I want to make that very, very clear. There will always be a first pick, but there won't always be an Adley Rutschman. And there won't always be a Bobby Witt. So when a team identifies that player, and this is a really good preface to what we're going to talk about here, when a team identifies that pick, you have to go for it because you don't get the opportunity to take it every time. You can only take what the market's giving you. Okay. In 2019, and this is the personal story, it was a blank check to Bobby Witt. I was that confident. I was willing to give him a blank check. Now, you can't spend your whole pull on it, but a blank check was offered because that's how good we thought the player was going to be. Teams like Cleveland, let's talk about Cleveland. They're not always willing to do that. It is a draft of accounting for them. These are some very, very sharp people that have been there for an extremely long time. They have a very specific culture. It's a very conservative organization. And from that has come a lot of general managers, a lot of vice presidents. We can list them around the league. This is a breeding ground for future general managers. So these are very, very sharp people. They're probably not going to be too creative. My guess in history, I would think, given where Cleveland, you asked me the history on Cleveland, where Cleveland's been a very conservative drafting organization that has targeted pitchers just over the last 4 or 5 years. They've produced almost nothing in the way of position players. Yes, we look out onto the field and we see Naylor and we see Stephen Kwan. But let's just talk holistically here. What have they produced? And when you look back through their drafts, they haven't even really targeted it. Not until 2022 when they took Chase, I think it was 22, that they took DeLauder. And that was risky because he was hurt, had a really bad ankle injury, seems to be paying off for them. In 2000 and what was it, 23? That was 22 with DeLauder. 23, they take Ralphie. He's a top 100 prospect. Really nice job taking him out of Long Beach. A little bit of a stretch maybe for some teams, but they took the bat guy they know they needed. They got Kifus. They take Cooper Ringle. So, but historically, they haven't done that. And they've done a great job with the pitching. We can go through the list of the Tanner Bibbies and the Shane Biebers and that kind of stuff. They do a great job valuing pitching throughout the draft. So they have to get this right. And when it comes to the money, if I'm Cleveland, number one, take the player you want. I know that they're going to try to get a little bit of a discount. My guess, they're probably working on Bazana. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I think that they probably want Bazana and they're trying to find a way to get the money down. That's just a guess. I don't know that factually. If they can't get the money down, gosh, just take Bazana if that's your guy. Or maybe it's Condon. Or maybe it's Caglione. Or maybe it's Weatherholt. But they got to take the guy and they got to nail this bat.
So let's talk about even that haircut. So what would be a haircut for them? It's 10. The slot's at 10. Is 9 more than enough, or like you're just going to go a hair over Skeen? So 9.3, you save $700K there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you make. There's still these precedents, and you're still dealing with agents, and nobody wants. This isn't about pulling the wool over somebody's eyes. Okay, this isn't about getting a player on the cheap. There's more at play here than just this singular selection. You know, everybody wants to save face. You don't want to make the agent look bad or put him in a bad spot. So to your point, if you went $1 million under, that's fair. If you looked at Skeens last year and said, okay, we'll give you a little more than Skeens, that's very, very fair. And hopefully that the agent that you're working with is willing to go that route.
It's for them, at least looking, and we've forecasted this draft from the high school side, the college side, what's there, right? There's kind of the top 2 college arms, right? Hagen Smith at the top with Chase Burns, those two together. And then Savage kind of goes down from there. We're talking about like, can you substitute a Holman for a Burn? You kind of can't do that.
Right.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
For the guards here, though, it feels like there is some depth in that high school pitching, right? The right-handers, and it's almost a good draft where in the past you take the haircut early, right? You get that haircut, it extends your draft from last year for you. Essentially, you're getting 2 first-round picks, like 2 top 15 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Extended from, hey, that haircut allows us to go into the 3rd round and get some guys over value.
Mm-hmm.
Now the guards might be able to go in the 4th and 5th round. All of a sudden, as the Astros and Dodgers who are at the bottom, they got to start crossing names out of high school arms who are valuing themselves at $2 million. They're still in play with the Guardians.
Yeah, they can't participate in what we think is a nice market this year, either for some 2nd round high school position players, high-end high school players, or some high school pitchers. It's very difficult when you have to punt 75 picks. And when we talk about, we talked about this earlier today about, the Astros and the Dodgers losing those 2nd and the 5th round picks for Ohtani. And these teams have to wait 75 picks. So they are out of that market. They don't even want to put those players up on the board. It's very difficult. Conversely, to your point, yes, Cleveland, who's been very, very good. I don't mean conservative to demolish Cleveland. That's just been their strategy, and they've executed it extremely well. And when we talk about evaluating drafts, yes, Cleveland's been very, very good at that. I'd say the time has come where they have to take one of these hitters. They can't even think about Burns.
Yeah.
They shouldn't even be thinking about Hagen Smith. Maybe Colorado is. We'll get to Colorado in a second. But when they pull Condon or they pull Bazana or whoever they decide to pull, absolutely they've got a wonderful opportunity ahead of them to A, have the money, and B, get into something that they've been pretty good at. And it doesn't have to be a high school guy. Maybe they take somebody like Holman, or maybe they jump into somebody like Prager and they continue to create that depth in their system of the Biebers and of the Tanner Bibees, and they'd be able to harvest those guys and the relievers that they've taken, like Hunter Gaddis in the 5th or 6th round. Those prospects are very, very valuable. So that's a great opportunity for Cleveland. I'd be excited if I was in their situation.
Let's bring the Rockies into the conversation too, because they're in similar boats. They're picking at 2. They have 4 picks in the top 100. One at the top. You were sitting in the hot seat the last 5-6 years. When do you find out who the guards are taking? Like, when will that kind of sift out there? Will it be Sunday morning, or will it be like, hey, we're finding out on TV?
Well, I think specifically because of who's picking at the very, very top, that's a very private group. Keep everything very, very close to the vest. I think it's going to be very tough, very similar to Baltimore. Sometimes those deals aren't done with Mike Elias Sig working with the A's. That happens the day of.
Okay.
So you're probably not going to know with Cleveland until leading right up until the pick. And certainly the media might not know. This is something that might be known by 1 or 2 teams, and that's probably it. So I think it'd be a surprise if Cleveland fell out of line and didn't take a Condon or a Bazana. That would surprise me. It really would. I wouldn't be blown away by it, because I think that there's some other players like we've talked about that certainly, and Seif talked about this. When you're up in this area of the draft, I don't view this as a Rushman situation. I don't view this as a Skeens situation. These are all bat guys, and they're good, and they have a chance to be very, very good. So all of these players tend to be a little bit more interchangeable this year. Good and interchangeable versus, wow, we absolutely have to take Rushman. So,
well, you know what? I'm going to go right back. Does Skeens making the All-Star game and just how electric he's been to start? I'm sure the guards, almost everybody, we're talking these bats. You got to go with the bat. You got to grab the. Do you start maybe thinking, hey, Church Burns really struck out a lot of guys. He's got 4+ pitches. What if he comes and pitches for us in October?
That's exactly, yeah. And they can do that. I wouldn't demolish, to use that word again. I wouldn't demolish him for doing, wouldn't be the route I would go. The game, what's interesting about the game today? And I heard this all the time in my situation, because we were portrayed as the team that can't draft hitting. We're not good at evaluating hitting. We're not good at developing hitters. So people would say that out of one side of their mouth, but on the other side, pitching wins championships. Can't win without pitching. You look at the Marlins this year, all of their pitchers. So you need this volume of pitchers. So I think it's an interesting dichotomy when you start talking about hitters and pitchers. It's really, really tough. Personally, it is very, very difficult to find a middle of the order bat. You know that. And certainly the bats that we're talking about at the top and some of these arms, they probably can't be harvested down in the comp to second round. So again, if I'm Cleveland, I'm going to plow right into one of these bats. Could they go the Skeens route like you're talking about here? Sure. Yeah, they can do that. I probably wouldn't, but they can do that.
So what about the Rockies? What are the Rockies thinking at 2?
Rockies are in a completely different spot. We've talked about this ad nauseum. Such an interesting organization. There's so many things I like about the Rockies, and then there's other things that just leave me scratching my head. I think I made the comment they weren't going to be that creative. You know, the Rockies they've historically been really, really good at this whole amateur drafting, and it's because their general manager is really, really good at this stuff. I don't know if he's good at everything. That's not me to decide. I can tell you that he's really good at the amateur drafting stuff. And you look back historically for the Rockies, it's bat after bat after bat. And I know we put the Orioles on a pedestal. The Rockies do a hell of a job evaluating bats. A hell of a job evaluating bats. And it's not just in the first round. So I think when you look at the situation that they have at the big league level, Shooter, you want to pitch in Colorado? Of course not. Nobody wants to go get their brains beat in there. So when they look at the draft and they take guys like Gabe Hughes a couple years ago, Chase Dollander's out there doing a really nice job. The other guy they took from the Wake Forest guy, Sully's out there. He's going pitch for pitch with Dollander. Completely different guy, but they're both in Spokane doing a really nice job. So I think when you look at Colorado, I'd have to support them pulling Burns off the board. I would support them pulling Hagen Smith off the board. I understand why they're doing that. You can go one of two routes. They can nail the first round bat like they've done in the past and trade, and then going down the road. I know people don't like to talk about this, and then dangle it out there for all the teams that do a better job with pitching. Or they can go, no, we need a cost controlled pitcher, and Burns is elite. Hagen Smith is elite. So we're just going to take it. They can go either of those routes, and it'd be very fair. Certainly this year, much more than 19 or 21. So
it feels to me, so like looking at the Rockies, like I'm with you, that Burns situation, kind of similar to Cleveland, right? The super all-star bat, it's going to be tough for you to pay for that guy in Cleveland, right? LA's going to come in, Dodgers going to come in, the Angels going to come in, Rangers, Yankees, right. Those big market teams come in. That's why you got to get that guy the same way. Hey, this thin air is going to scare some guys off. That's
right. How about our boy Bo Naylor? Are we good with Bo Naylor having a heck of a year for Cleveland?
Yeah, the drafted
by the Marlins, the trio. Doing a great job. At some point, he's going to be a free agent. Sure would be nice to have Condon. Sure would be nice to have Bazana. Sure would be nice to have Kurtz. You know, something like that is going to really allow them to be more creative and supplement some of the stuff that they consistently lose. Cleveland's an interesting spot. I mean, they're always good. Cleveland's always good, but they're never great. Take the great player here and do it.
And you know what? And we were talking about this offline. These two teams, huge pools. Like these are sensationally big. Like 16, they're way beyond. It's more than triple what the Astros and Dodgers are going after. How important is the actual draft year? I always think back to, we were talking about the Royals in 18. They got all those college arms, and they've been solid, but like in a different year, they might have hit on 4 Cy Youngs and like just who they could have gotten and how much is predicated into what talent is here right now. You can't say like, hey, we think 25 is going to be a better year. We're going to just pull back $5 million and save it for next year. It's all predicated on what that year's is at.
The absolutely. Here's what we know. Here's what we know as an industry. You and I, we've talked about market. People keep hearing us say market. What's the market? What's the market for high school position players? What's the market for college bats? What's the market for middle infielders, and so on and so forth? Let's just talk about the market as a whole and what it really produces. Do you think it's an accident that Houston was picking in the top 2, 3, 4 for 5 years in a row. That was an orchestrated effort. Not healthy necessarily for the game. That's the system that Major League Baseball sets up. And look what the result of that is. Look what they were able to do with their picks. Carlos Correa, right? First pick overall. They save money on him. And who do they go get? Lance McCullers. They pick in the top 5. They get Bregman and they get Tucker in the same draft. They executed the same strategy in Baltimore. And now they're going to eventually you pick towards the bottom again, just like Houston's doing. But when you're trying to build a championship team, you need to understand what the market is going to bear. And when you're a team that fluctuates and to your point, when you're a team that cannot have some type of strategic alignment and some type of plan from ownership through scouting, and you say you want to build through scouting, what happens is you're picking all over the place. And when you're picking all over the place, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to what? The ebbs and flows of the market.
I'm thinking along the lines of the Rockies, and you talked about like the Burns aspect.
Yep.
We've done our forecasting, right? The draft board is out. Go to prepbaseball.com, check out the draft board from the college side, high school side, positional breakdown. With that strength or I shouldn't say strength, the depth of those high school arms, where I would say last year, I think there were 2, you took one of them, but 2 high school right-handers that got $3 million or more. So it was
Echeverria, right?
Echeverria and Noble. So 2 guys. Now the Rockies can stretch that out. Hey, we have a chance now. We know we're going to lose. Hey, the Dodgers can't do this. The Astros can't do this. Once we hit the 4th, 5th, even into the 6th round, if they stretch it long enough, you start collecting guys 1-2 to 1-5. And that list goes from, hey, only 2 guys to 15. And now the pool that we're working in, we can get those right-handers a little further down. And we don't have to take them early because nobody else is going to take them. They're going to price themselves out. That to me is something I think that the Rockies can plan for. Hey, those high school arms we get later, but early on, those position guys that we want to take a hit on that we think somebody might grab in the 2nd round, let's attack that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think when you start getting into high school pitching or pitching in general, understanding who your competition is, that was a layup. Houston and the Dodgers, they're just kind of out. And even if let's just say that the Dodgers plowed into one of those high school arms, big deal. There's a whole bunch of other ones, right? Yeah. So you can eliminate a couple teams right there. And then you can eliminate other teams that just won't do it. They refuse to do it. We've talked about some of those in the past. So when you shrink the market from maybe 30 teams down to about 20 teams, and then you look at those other 20 teams and you go, they don't really have the money for it. Now you're down to 10 teams. So you're really shrinking and providing an opportunity for yourself to attack some of the surplus in the market. And make no mistake, the high school players are signable. I'll be very clear here. The high school players are signable. Is it easy every time? No. These kids, when you're starting to flash 1-3, 1-5, 2 million in front of them, you're telling them you're going to pitch in the big leagues, prove us wrong. And they understand that. They all want to play professional baseball. Major league teams are taking care of their education through the college scholarship plan. I don't want to talk about the NIL right now. They're taking care of Let's save that for another day. So they want to sign, and they're going to be available. Echeverria, Knopf, Thomas White we did last year. These guys want to sign and go out. Carson Milbrandt we've done. Jacob Miller, so on and so forth. Owen Murphy.
Even to tie right to Milbrandt, you can get 5 Milbrandts with the Rockies, sign Burns at 2, get another $3 million guy with your 2nd pick. Like the amount of stuff you can stretch to, which will be on live with the draft in the pre-show after the 1st round, some rapid reaction on day 1, talking about recruiting classes, because I still think you're going to have to wait late into day 2 to really feel safe if you're a college coach this year because of the way guys can stretch. But moving on to these
shooter. When the high school guy gets pulled, if you're a college coach, as soon as the name is called, I don't care if it's the 3rd round or the 5th round or the 1st round. When the name gets called, he's gone.
Yeah.
You go back and look over the last 5, 6, 7 years that teams can't pull the name. I've said this in the last one. You can't pull the name unless you're pretty certain you can sign them. The days of Gunnar Hoglund, that's hard to predict that would happen. that a player is just going to not show up. So
Yeah,
teams will know.
You don't want to feel that heat late. But these three teams in the middle were, for me, kind of, these are the ones I have circled. So the Royals, 4 picks in the top 100. They have $15.4 million in their pool. The D-backs, who I might be the most excited to see what they do. They've done such a great job. They have $12.6 million, but they pick 5 times in the top 100, including 3 in the top 35. And then the Padres, who half of what the Guardians have at 9.3 million, but they pick at 25, 52, 88, 118, 134, and 135. So those late, especially the 134 and 135 on the Padres, I'm really excited to see what are they going to do here. But those three teams, let's talk a little bit about what they've done. So Royals, start at the top, DJ, with the Royals. Then we'll go to D-backs and Padres.
Yeah, I think with the Royals is, it's such an interesting organization because they've won and they didn't win and they win and they didn't win. They're back and forth. They were in transition. And let's just call it what it is. This is a derivative of the Atlanta Braves. Okay. That's what this is. So when you look at their organization, what they've tried to do over the last few years, certainly, back you referenced 18, they tried to plow into all that college pitching. And certainly at the time, it looked very, very good. And whether it's panned out exactly how they've wanted it to pan out, strategically, I can't doubt what they did right there. That was well planned. I like it. Well, now they've got a new scouting director in there. Who's the scouting? Well, he's from the Giants, but he did very, very well. Brian Bridges is who I'm referring to. He comes over from San Francisco. He was part of the Atlanta group that when that whole thing dissolved because of some of the international stuff, they moved on from everybody. So he ends up in San Francisco, but he did a really, really good job. And he's one hell of a pitching evaluator. He's very, very good. I don't know if he gets the credit that he deserves for what he can do with pitching and what he did in Atlanta. Yes, he was part of drafting Austin Riley. So they did a lot of things really, really, and they believe in development. And in the meantime, the Royals have completely revamped their player development system relative to pitching. So you can imagine with the Royals here, what they might be able to do with some of these picks. They have 4 picks in the top 100. They're going, where are they picking here? Of course, I didn't have them highlighted.
I'll take it for a second. I mean, you have a superstar at shortstop. They hit obviously on Bobby Witt Jr. They're moving into a new stadium. This is a big draft. And we talked about those big markets, those arms. Who can we bring in? It does seem like the way baseball, we've added the playoff team. So bringing more playoff teams into the mix in that late season, getting those arms is especially important. So having Brian Bridges come over, what he's done. But I do think there's a ton of value in this year's draft where, hey, they need to pick it up because Bobby Witt Jr. is hitting superstar level right now. They have some nice young pieces, and they're going to continue to build around that in the near future.
I think so. Look what they did last year. They went with the catcher, right? Mitchell's out doing a really nice job. That's a risky pick. We've talked catching here. You start getting into this high school catching high in the first round. That is some risky business. But this is the Braves. I'm sorry, the Royals. I mean, the Braves, right? So this is a development organization. And I say that with a lot of enthusiasm for the people that are there. I like what they're doing. They were willing to pull Mitchell last year. That's good stuff. So when you look, I was looking down because I just lost my train of thought on where they exactly were picking. But when they're picking at 6, could they take a Kurtz? Could they take a bat? Sure. But they can. I'd be willing to bet their maybe not a pipe dream. Their dream would be Hagen Smith or Burns. Something like that would be great for them. If they don't get that arm, then they go right into one of the bats, whichever one's left. And then they come back at 39 in the comp round. They can do anything they want. Do another bat. They can do those arms. They come back again at 41, just a few picks later. So they're in a pretty good spot to capitalize on a evolving organization. I like the direction that the Royals are going.
And you know what? Picking at 6 too, I'm always fascinated. Like the decisions, like there's different layers of decision right in the first round when we start separating. Like, okay, these 4 position player college guys, these 2 arms, all of a sudden the decisions start having to actually be made, right? Adley Rutschman, 1-1. Hey, this is good. Second pick, Bobby Witt Jr. Right. It wasn't that much thought that had to go into it. Like, these were the guys we had to evaluate on our board. That board kind of gets pretty even at a certain point. We got to start making decisions.
Absolutely. And I think in 19, that's a good example. For us, I can only speak to my personal situation. I think everybody had it similar, but I can't say for certain. It was Bobby Witt Jr. and Adley Rutschman. And then there was a hard line. And the rest of the players were interchangeable. Now, what we know now is that there were some players that shouldn't have been as interchangeable as others. But in the moment, you don't know that. You just know that, hey, in this year's draft, it's a group of about 8 or a group of about 9 that are relatively interchangeable. That should make, you're talking about the Royals. That should make the Royals feel really good. Or Mike Shirley, Chris Getz, the White Sox. They should feel really, really good that even if they can't come to a consensus, which in decision-making is not always the best thing to do, but if they can't come to that consensus, they're still going to pull a really, really good player. It doesn't get a little bit murky until about you look down around Washington or Detroit, then it starts to get a little murky because now there starts to become a line, and then the next group of 20 players become a little bit more interchangeable.
I wonder if that is the area where all of a sudden these haircuts become important. Hey, at this point of 9, 10, 11, this is where I go back to quantity has a quality all to its own. Hey, now we're thinking about our 4th rounder at 13. We're thinking about 5th round at 14 because we're going to try to grab as many of these 1.2 million, 1.1 million, 1.7 million instead of going, hey, we're going over slot for this guy. We have to get this. No, this is one of those drafts where there's no hard line. We need to start seeing what these guys will take.
When you're picking within the top 5 or 6 or 7 picks this year, absolutely yes. It's a fair question to say, would you rather have Bazana at 8.6 million or Condon at 9.1? Okay. But in reality, you're probably just going to take the guy that you really, really want there. Because there's such a consensus and they've separated themselves so much. Conversely, and nobody, there's going to be anybody in the room that's going to go, I'm not sure. No, there's going to be anybody that says that. I can assure you that if you're picking 16, there will be somebody at the table that said no about the player you're about to pick. That's how divisive it gets as you move down the board. There isn't any division at the top. It's either you want A or 1A. It's not. But when you get into the middle of the first round or the back of the first round, there will be people. Now, they're not going to come out of a draft room and say it. At least the good people won't say it. But there will be people at the table that say, no, I would not select that player, let alone give him a haircut. So because of that situation, absolutely fair question. Would you rather have Christian Moore for this or Walker Janek for that? Those become very fair questions relative to the picks you have down the board. And it becomes more relevant to say, is Walker Janek disguised as Cozart? Or is he disguised as Ethan Anderson or something along those lines?
Yeah.
Or can we take Dreiling in the 2nd round instead of taking Christian Moore, and then we take Brecht instead? Those are very fair questions with the money and that when you get into the middle of the first round.
It's interesting, and that's why I think we put so much work into our draft board. The list of the high school guys, the college guys, so that it's not a moving wall. It's not, things aren't moving around. Hey, this is where we were at, so that when we look back, hey, the Royals crushed us. Look what they did against this versus, hey, that wasn't a great pick. Because I think a lot of times, hey, at the time, this guy was a really good player. That was the pick. And it's hard for ownership to listen to that. But like that's kind of where I see us standing. Hey, at the time, that was the pick. You made the right pick in every sense in that year. Unfortunately, this guy, Mike Trout, became Mike Trout. Sorry, you guys all missed. But it wasn't a miss at the time.
Yeah, and that's the tough part that you battle all these directors and these decision makers, and why it needs to be a team effort here and why everybody has to be on the same page. Because when somebody says to me, who's the best player, I'm sorry, but I'm going to shrug my shoulder and say, I don't know if it's Bobby Witt or Rutschman. If you're asking me to thread that needle, I can't do it. A scouting director can't do it. And if that's the standard you're holding them to, you're never going to be satisfied. You just have to say, did we? And that's why you evaluate people on what they've selected and what those players become. You can't worry. Other teams are going to get, not to go down this rabbit hole or to get off topic, but other teams will get good players. That's okay. You just have to be happy with the player you took, because the decision that you made was predicated not just on who the best player was, but what was the best fit for the organization at that time with the information that we had.
Awesome. So, well, we did a little bit of Royals there, mainly because I'm so fascinated by the D-backs. I think from the time that this initially got sent out, and those 3 picks, I mean, obviously the guards at number 1, who are they going to take? But sneak preview of our preview to the draft show, a lot of D-backs talk, because what are they going to do here? You look back, I think the Mariners did a great job last year. They had those 3 picks. They took Farmelo, Ty Pete, and Colt Emerson. I think those were outstanding picks by them. Not easy picks, right? To go after a high school guy. I mean, it takes a lot of cojones, but they did a great job there. Obviously, Colt Emerson's a favorite of everybody's, including yours. What are the D-backs going to do?
Yeah, this is, and I don't mind saying this. There are organizations that I respect more than other organizations. It's just what it is. I've been in the game for 20 some years, and you get around people and you watch how they go through their process and how they operate, how professional they are. I mentioned the Rockies. No, I don't think they're the most creative, but I don't like when people put other teams on a pedestal and you just ignore what the Rockies have done. They do a great job on the amateur market. When I look at a team like the Diamondbacks, it's the same thing. I think the Diamondbacks do a wonderful job. These are smart, sharp baseball guys that have a really good balance of scouting and analytics. And it starts at the top with really good leadership through Mike Hazen. They got Amiel Sadeh, who's been in charge of scouting for, I don't even know how long. He's been in Boston, comes through the Theo. This is a derivative of Boston, of course. Okay. A little bit of a derivative of Cleveland. So these are sharp guys. They do a really good job. With that said, you look back through their drafts and what we can expect here. This is going to be heavy college. I'd be very surprised if it's not. As much as I want to sit here and say, hey, how about Dickerson? Hey, how about Message? How about Caminetti? How about Mayfield? This just hasn't been their MO. Now, will they bite on Corbin Carroll? Will they bite on Jordan Lawler? Yeah, they will with the first pick. After that, this is an organization that you can just expect they're going to go plow right into Luke Holman, Cortez. A few years ago, they took Del Castillo out of Miami. They get a lot of comfort in these college position players specifically that are going to go out and do a good job. So I would suspect you're going to start, this is where you're going to start seeing the Jared Thomases of the world come into play from Texas, or maybe even a Walker Janik. We've talked about his situation. We love Walker Janik. Seif loves Walker Janik. We're not sure what's going to happen there. This is a team that might plow right into it.
Do you think with the first pick, that would be where they take their chance versus the second two? Are they already identifying like, hey, at the least we will have one of these catchers left, whether it's Loma Vida, Cozart, whoever, we'll have somebody there if we need it.
Yeah, that's a tough one there with the teams picking behind him. Baltimore's right behind him. Minnesota's behind him. Milwaukee's behind him. These are model-heavy teams.
Yeah.
And those model-heavy teams are going to push some of these college players. So, I think Arizona might have to just take – I'm not referring to their 29th pick. I'm referring to that 31st pick, which is their second one that they got, which is great. Corbin Carroll, he's a top 100 prospect. He breaks with the team. He becomes rookie of the year. They get that extra pick. I love that. But I think right behind there is where they got to think. If they want a player at 31, they have to take him.
The opportunity also, not to be the pessimistic guy, they could get their pockets picked 3 times in a row.
And I think the key, don't be pessimistic. And that happened. Watched that happen when I was with the Yankees in 2022. I'm still burnt up about 22. That happened to me. But the conspiracy side of me is like, did they just shop my picks around after we did this deal early in the day? I mean, I think we were picking I can't remember what number it was, 60 but anyways, neither here nor there.
Oh man, I got you going now.
I think the good thing, you're talking about taking Advil. I think the thing with Arizona, when you look at their picks, they're just going to take who they want to take at 29, I think. But they can move money around. What if they really wanted Ryan Sloan?
Mm.
What if they really wanted Ryan Sloan? Could they push Ryan Sloan into that comp round and really pay for a premium high school arm? They could. I don't think they would. I've done stuff like that, but I look at them as long as they can cluster 1, 2, 3, 4. If they can cluster 5 players that they're confident are going to be back there, they're going to get a great haul. And then they'll come back to 64. Maybe they'll save some money on a guy like Houston did. I don't know who that player is this year because I'm not that well informed. Houston did a great job. They take Bryce Matthews, and then what they plow right into Jake Bloss from Georgetown last year. And Bloss is out doing a great job.
Yeah.
So Arizona has that opportunity to spend some money in those comp rounds. And then if there's that senior, I shared the story about Landon Knack in 2020 that allowed him to acquire Clayton Beater. Arizona could do that in reverse. They can spend some money, and then they can go get this year's version of Jake Bloss, this year's version of Landon Knack in the second round if they need to.
I am very intrigued by what they do because you're just talking about like it's almost like you kind of take your chance that college guy first, maybe then we grab that arm. Then they've done such a great job with the athletes. Carter Johnson coming to play, Wyatt Sanford coming to play. Hey, we have kind of our settled college guys. Ooh, we're gonna just dive into like these high school upside athletes. But let's move on to the Padres. And whereas the D-backs have those 3 picks early, the Padres are a little bit later. Okay, so only 9.3 compared to those guys at the top who are with 8 digits going. 118, 134, 135. Now, I know there's some differences on the staff. In the past, Hudson Head, I think he got $3 million. Was that the 3rd or 4th round? Able to stretch that dollar, find guys late that they identify, and kind of seems like they were stashed in Hudson Head at that time. Last year, they took Dylan Head, who I think they saved some money on him. They're able to stretch that dollar. Let's get some more guys. Cannon Kemp was a great pick for them late on day 2. What can they do? And those picks 134 and 135, which I have circled, what are they going to do here? Because they've done such a great job drafting. You've seen their talent all over the league right now, really developing. What are they going to do?
The short answer is I don't know. That's a long way down the draft. That's a long way down the draft board. But I will say this about the Padres. I think that's the type of decision. That's the type of strategy that's going to evolve in real time. And I think when we have our live show, that's going to be interesting. See what they do at the top if they save some money. One of the things I like about the Padres now, and this is not an organization that I hold in the same regard as some of these other ones, but what I would not say about the Rockies, what do we say about the Rockies? I don't think they're that creative. These guys are creative. These guys are bold. Chris Kemp, who's worked on the international side for a long time for them, he is bold. I think we know what AJ Preller is. He is bold. They are smart. They're shrewd. They don't even want these guys to get to the big leagues with the Padres. They can care less. This is all about acquiring assets for them, acquiring toolsy players. If they make it to the big leagues for the Padres, great. But I think we see what AJ Preller is willing to do in the trade market, and he knows what's valuable. So they're just going to take James Wood. They're not going to worry that he strikes out too much, or they're going to take that toolsy player in. Who did you mention? Dylan Head. Do you think that they think that Hudson Head is a failure? They don't. They were able to capitalize on that and move it from major league products. So the one thing I would say about the Padres here is they are creative. They will find a way to maximize these picks. And I think specific to your question at 135, 134, and 135, those could be splash picks. We just have to see how some of these high school players come off the board. But I would expect they'll make a splash somewhere.
Stretching that dollar, and I'm not going to highlight, I've been a huge fan of what they've done because they've attacked those upside guys. They've evaluated really well. Obviously, it helps when those guys turn into really good players and everybody's development's at a different level. But I still think there's some high school talent and some athletes that they can attack even at 52 and 88. So 25, what are they going to do? Probably, to me, we're going to try to save some money. Who can we?
Go ahead.
No, I was saying, who can we get, save a couple dollars, and double down with 52? Extend what kind of shelf life? And to go back, sorry, I misspoke about this. I love what they've done because they have valued winning. And Preller, whether he's traded those guys and the Nationals got these guys, my man is trying to win. And I think
Love
that's
it.
really important for the
So
sport in general. And they are in a division where they can't hold back. We can't just tippy toe and try to get a fourth outfielder here. We're going against the
Mhm.
Dodgers. We need to actually hit. We're going against the Giants, the D-backs.
they, when I think about the Padres and we talk about some alignment from top to bottom, that's aligned.
Hmm.
When I see the general manager scouting Team USA, listen, I don't think that every general manager is in a position to do that, but look at what AJ's history is. Look at what he's done in Latin America. This is an organization that understands the strategic alignment from top to bottom. Do I love everything they do? No, I don't. But these guys will trade players. They will acquire players because of what you just said. It is about winning. They don't feel the need to have every single one of their draft picks make the big leagues. He's comfortable in his own skin. He knows what he's doing. So they're just going to go out. They're going to value these players, to your point, the James Woods of the world and the CJ Abrams of the world. They're going to acquire them. And if they need to trade them, they're going to trade them. If not, they'll allow them to move right through the system. So
You know
I
what?
like what they've done.
Not somewhat ironic. One, not scared. Dylan Head off to a good start. They traded him to Miami. We're trying to win now. We're getting a 300 hitter,
Right.
batting champion.
That's right.
There is a chance Braylon Payne will be available around their pick.
Mm-hmm.
Similarities to Dylan Head plus center field, left-handed stick. All of a sudden, I wonder if they were thinking a year in advance, like, hey, we could trade him now. We're just going to get 2.0 in 24. So anyway, Padres.
So you bring up Braylon Payne, and we think about guys like Kellen Lindsey,
Mhm.
and we think about guys like our Nebraska shortstop,
Tyson
right?
Lewis.
Tyson Lewis, though. I'm sorry that I don't know all the names off the top of my head because I haven't been out as much. I know a lot of them, but when I hear those kind of names, it just starts screaming Padres,
Yeah.
Dodgers, maybe the Yankees to a certain degree, but these are the teams that will attack that kind of talent.
And even Tyson Lewis, to the extent like that happens there, I think internally we're saying, yeah, this guy has a chance to blow up. Whether it works or doesn't in the moment, that was a great pick by the Padres or whoever did that.
Check this out. You go look at the trades over the last 3, 4, 5 years. This is something general managers are thinking about that scouting directors are not. I don't want to lump all scouting directors together, but I'm sure that most scouting directors aren't thinking about this. Go look at the trades over the last 3, 4, 5 years. What is valued at the deadline? James Wood. They are high school players, high school position players, high school players with tools. These are the players who, at this moment in time, and it's a very fluid situation, that are holding their value. Teams don't want to let go of them. Teams are trying to acquire them. The shrewd teams know this in the draft.
That is
So
outstanding.
they're going to acquire Dylan Head because they know what other teams want. This is still, we talk about the business of baseball. This is about assets. And that sounds harsh because we love players. We want to elevate players. But you talk about the business of baseball for a second. You are acquiring assets that you can monetize down the road. And the Padres, to end this out here with the Padres, they monetize them as well as anybody.
D-backs, Padres.
Hats off to them.
We're all in. Let's dive all the way down to the bottom. The two teams that have had success, they're kind of actually going in different directions right now, which is also fascinating. But the Dodgers, who have the second lowest pool at 6.1 million, they picked twice in the top 100 at 23 and 98. So end of the first round, end of the third round. And then the Astros, who have 5.9 million, lowest. They have one pick in the top 100. They also pick at 101. So essentially 2 top 100 picks. What are these guys doing? What's your plan? DJ? You got you're in the room. They actually gave you windows in LA and Houston, so you should be a little bit better.
Get some fresh air at least. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, to wrap up that the Padres segment there. We're not going to sit here and talk too much about what Detroit's going to do. But you know who the scouting director is in Detroit? It's Mark Connors. Where was he before? He was with Detroit. He was with San Diego. He was leading those drafts. So pay attention to what Detroit does. Last year, who did Detroit have a chance to take? Wyatt Langford, right? Who did they take? Wyatt Langford's in the big leagues. And there certainly is some value, some proximity value, some recency value to get that guy to the big leagues fast. They took Max Clark, doing a nice job in the minor leagues right now. Langford's in the big leagues. So Detroit's an interesting situation because you got a lot of ex-Cubs guys in there, and you've got a Padres guy there. So it'll be interesting to see what Detroit goes. You know, when you start talking about Houston, you start talking about the Dodgers, and I guess you could just lump the Yankees in there as well. These teams that are picking at the very bottom that have also lost picks, not necessarily this year for the Yankees, but last year for the Yankees. I cannot emphasize enough how much of a problem that is for an amateur scouting director. Talent falls off exponentially as you move further and further down the board. And the closer you get to 100, it starts to fall off at a rapid rate. And specifically, the hitters really start to fall off. So you start talking about teams like the Astros, who've been hampered by being really, really good. I guess that's not a bad thing, but they've been really, really good. Then they got hit with all those, the fines, the sanctions and stuff. And they lose picks there. So they've had a really difficult time rebuilding their system. Enter Dana Brown. Dana comes from Toronto, historically a very good drafting team, specifically with pitchers. He moves to Atlanta, just like Brian Bridges was in Atlanta. And you look at Dana Brown, and what did they take? They took Spencer Strider. They took, what was Harris's name in 19? The outfielder they found in the third round. That's a Dana Brown pick. So now here he is in Houston. People raised an eyebrow when they took Bryce Matthews. Maybe he wasn't for everybody out of Nebraska last year. He's gone out and done a really good job. Yeah, his slug's a little bit low, but this guy is a hit collector. He's doing a really nice job for the Astros right now. So they're going to have to strike. I don't want to say get lucky. They're just going to have to be very, very precise when they make this pick. And they're going to have to look down the road to 25 and 26, which we know at Prep Baseball look like really strong markets. Like the market is going to continue, certainly like in Florida and some areas like that as we move to. They're going to have to acquire some picks. The big league team's not winning as much. They're going to have to be creative and acquire some picks. So they're just going to have to thread the needle like they did last year with Bryce Matthews. Or they're going to have to take a guy, maybe like we keep bringing up, like a Walker Janik. Take a chance. Cleveland took Chase DeLauder. We loved DeLauder. He was all banged up. We loved Gavin Williams. They might have to just swallow some risk on an injury or something like that to maybe acquire some value, which isn't always a bad thing. Cleveland's done a good job with it.
I think swallowing that risk is something valuable. And tell me, sometimes I've thought about it like this. So they have those two picks there, right? $6 million, fairly big markets. I mean, those two biggest cities in the country. That second pick, right? 98, 101.
Yeah.
End of the third round. But to them, that's their second rounder. You could go early. Is it something you go, hey, if we can get our first pick for 2.5, then we get this next guy at 2. And everybody below us is trying to get 1 point, probably 1.1 to 1.5, trying to grab guys in the third round, whereas we're going to be able to go up to 2. So we might be able to get more value here and try to get, essentially to me with that pool, hey, we're going to get 2 guys. We want to get our 2 guys, and then we'll piece together our scouting department, find some really good guys for undervalue. Is that something they should be thinking about?
Yeah, they can think about it. The hard part here, whether you're the Dodgers or you're the Astros or a team like this, where you're losing 75 picks. Other teams are very good. You know, I used to tell my guys with the Marlins, like, let me be very clear here, boys. We don't have the best scouts in the industry. Okay. There are other good scouts, other teams that are going to make a decision. That's the nature of it. It's what it is. We have some good scouts.
They have TrackMan too.
They have TrackMan too, and they have analysts too. So what happens here is some of the things we know is, yes, there are other good analytic departments. There are other good scouting departments. We know that there's 75 picks in between, and shooter, here's what we also know. The players are going to sign. Players are going to sign.
Yeah.
In this area, when we're in the top 100, where it's very, very easy to go north of $1 million, even for a team that doesn't have a large pool. So what happens is if you're trying to push that player, you're trying to wait for that player down at 101, 100, 101, 102, it's very hard to anticipate that they're going to be there. So while you might try to do that, you can't, hope for the best, expect the worst. How about that?
Now, are they in different positions? We kind of talked about where the organization is, the big league club. They're clearly in different spots right now. The Dodgers, we talked about some of their picks, like Maddox, Bruns, guys who they've gone after the top. Do they still have an opportunity? Hey, we can take a chance here. Whereas, hey, the Astros, I guess we're kind of restocking, but we might need to get a little more reliable college guy here versus the Dodgers going to be like, hey, we're attacking Wyatt Stanford. We're going to get Wyatt Stanford and we're going to get Carter Johnson. We're going to grab both those upside guys.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment, Shooter. I mean, the Dodgers have an immense amount of money, so they really can do anything they want. You look at who they took last year. We talked about Kendall George, who's going out. That wasn't a consensus pick. Kellen Lindsey this year's not going to be a consensus pick. You know, our Nebraska shortstop's not going to be a consensus pick. They have the luxury to do that. What I do know the Dodgers have done, which I find very interesting, is they took, and interestingly enough, they took him in very similar spots. I don't remember the exact pick for Will Smith. And this is the luxury the Dodgers have and why you see so much variety on their draft board. They're going to take Will Smith in the early 30s, call it a comp pick, whenever that was. And then they're going to come back and who's the number one prospect in their organization right now? It's Dalton Rushing, who they took in the second round at 40, a catcher. So ironically from the same school.
Dude, who caught for Louisville this year? Let me just go take a peek real quick.
Exactly. So to your point on flexibility, the Dodgers are just going to take the best player. Sometimes it's Bobby Miller at Louisville and Dalton Rushing at Louisville and Will Smith at Louisville. And then sometimes it's the young high school kid in Southern Alabama, Maddox Bruns. My sense in looking at what the market is this year, they took Kendall George last year. Is there that valuable college player that can move through their system relatively quick? Maybe it's Brody Brecht. Maybe it's the guy that they need to help a little bit. They've done really well with.
It's funny you bring up Brecht, and it's there's a lot of organization we've talked about where it's like, can Brecht go there? Ooh, that's a risk. There's some risk there. And then you get to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers like, give us all that risk because we're going to squeeze out a diamond from this. And those are the fascinating ones with the Dodgers. I'll be curious to see what the Astros did. Matthews last year, who's off to a good start in this first full year for them. So I think
that's the route they go, Shoot. I think they probably lean into that direction. They find one of these good college players down the board. You got Walker. We keep going back to Walker Janik. You got Jared Thomas down the road. And you got some other guys. Could they do a Wyatt Sanford? Sure, they can do that. But I think looking at Houston, knowing some of the Derek Ladnier is a really good scout, came from Arizona. Dana brought him over from the Arizona crew, who I just talked about them being very, very good. He's got Russ Bovee. He's got some veterans there. I think they'll end up making a really nice pick in Houston. And maybe it'll be another college guy again.
Well, that was outstanding stuff. Just some plans, some potential plans for these organizations. We're excited to see because they will all come to actuality this Sunday during the draft. We will be on live 15 minutes prior to kind of preview some thoughts with Dr. Seif and DJ, myself. At the end of round one, we'll hop right back on live. Check us on all social media outlets. And then at the end of the day, some rapid reactions, what to watch for in day two, some teams that we liked throughout the first day. But DJ, the draft is finally here. I can't wait to see what happens. There's going to be a lot of happy faces, happy families, happy organizations. So I'm excited to get after it with you on Sunday.
All right, Shooter. Thanks.
We'll see you guys.